The silence in the presidential palace was unlike any other silence. It was heavier than the marble columns that loomed over the hallways, heavier than the armed guards that flanked the doors. It was the silence of betrayal, and it sat heavily on the chest of Ibrahim Traoré, the young revolutionary, turned president of Burkina Faso. He stood alone in his private study, his hands folded behind his back as he looked out the tall window into the night that cloaked Ouagadougou. The city lights blinked like judgmental stars, and behind them, the whispers had already begun. The news had broken just 6 hours ago, but it felt like 6 years. The television across from him replayed the footage in a brutal loop. His wife, Aminata, elegant and soft, spoken, her face pale under the fluorescent lights of the press room, standing before a microphone and speaking words that had detonated like a political bomb. "I have something to confess. Something the people of Burkina Faso deserve to know. For the past 8 years, I have been in contact with French intelligence." The press had erupted, journalists shouting over one another, flashes from cameras creating a strobe effect as her face wavered between composure and crumbling. And then she added the final blow, and I passed on information, classified information. There had been no time for preparation, no damage control, no phone call, no warning, nothing, sir, came a quiet voice behind him. It was Captain Sidi, his closest aide and former comrade from the revolution. Sidi stepped into the study and closed the door behind him gently, as if trying not to disturb a funeral. "We've contained the narrative as much as we can. State media is blacked out, but social media's gone insane. The opposition's calling for a tribunal. The military is demanding answers." Ibrahim turned slowly, his eyes bloodshot but dry. He hadn't cried, not yet. "Is she under protection?" "Yes, sir, house arrest at the secondary compound. No one gets in or out." He nodded slowly. "And the children, they're safe, still unaware of the details." A pause. "Good." He moved to the chair behind his desk and sat down like a man who'd aged 10 years in a day. "Call a meeting with the cabinet. Emergency session. No leaks. Phones left outside." Sidi hesitated. "Sir!" "The vice president, Daira, he's not coming." Ibrahim's head tilted. "Why?" "He's in Paris." Convenient timing. Extremely convenient. The door closed behind Sidi, and Ibrahim was alone again. The weight of betrayal wasn't just personal, it was political. Everything he had fought for, everything he had sacrificed since toppling the corrupt junta 3 years ago, now lay in jeopardy. The West had called him a populist, an autocrat in disguise. But his people had called him hope, and now that hope looked tarnished. His wife, the woman who had stood by him on every stage, kissed babies at his side, spoken of Pan-African sovereignty, had been feeding intelligence to the former colonizers. He could almost hear the colonels whispering already. Coups didn't need tanks anymore. All they needed was doubt. The door burst open. General Kabor entered without knocking, followed by Minister of Security Hadi Zatour and Chief Legal Counsel Nana Cohn. All three had faces carved from stone. "Ibrahim," Kabor said bluntly, "we need to talk. Now." "I called a cabinet." "There's no time." Hadiza cut in. "They're organizing protests. The students, the unions, they think you knew." "I didn't." Ibrahim snapped. "You think I would?" "We believe you," said Nana, her voice measured. "But public perception is already outpacing the truth. You need to get ahead of this." Kabor dropped a folder on the desk. "We intercepted an encrypted transmission this morning. It originated from inside your household. It was sent 3 days ago to Paris, to the DGSE. Ibrahim's face darkened. "Aminata," Nana shook her head. "The origin wasn't her device. It was your son's tablet, but she could have used it." Ibrahim felt the room spinning. "That's impossible. She wouldn't use Kofi's tablet." "But she had access," Kabor said. "We can't ignore that." Hadiza stepped forward. "We need to question her formally, tonight. This can't be handled privately anymore." "No cameras," Ibrahim said. "No promises." Kabor replied. "The army wants transparency. They're nervous." Ibrahim stood. "I'll question her myself." "You can't," Nana interjected. "Conflict of interest. You're emotionally compromised." "I am the president of this republic," he said coldly, "and this is my family. I'll speak to her first." Then you can do whatever you want." The silence was brief but sharp. 10 minutes, Kabor relented. "Then we go in." The ride to the secondary compound was short but suffocating. Ibrahim sat beside Sidi in the armored vehicle, his mind a whirlwind of fragmented memories. Aminata holding Kofi's tiny hand on their first day at school. Aminata standing beside him as gunfire echoed during the coup. Aminata reading Nahuda under a mango tree. None of it made sense anymore. When they arrived, the gates opened with a screech. Guards saluted. Inside the villa, Aminata sat in the living room, surrounded by silence and shadows. She looked up as he entered, her face unreadable. "You came," she said softly. "You didn't give me a choice." He replied, voice like gravel, "Ibrahim, no, you don't speak yet. I have to ask. I need to know." "Why?" A pause. She closed her eyes. "Because I had no choice." "That's not good enough." She stood slowly. "You think it was easy. You think I wanted this. They had my sister in Marseille. They threatened her, said she was on a watch list for funding Pan-African activism, that she be deported or disappeared. They gave me a deal, just information, logistics, travel plans, nothing that could endanger national security. You betrayed your country. I tried to protect my family." He stepped closer, his fists clenched. "We are your family. You're a soldier. You signed up for sacrifice. I didn't, and I never gave them anything critical. They say you sent a message 3 days ago." She flinched. "Yes. What was in it?" Her lips trembled. Something I thought you needed to know about Daira. He's working with them. He's planning to replace you." Silence fell like a guillotine. "What?" He reached out to them months ago, promised to return to Western alignment. "They told me because they thought I'd help them. I sent you a warning anonymously. I used Kofi's tablet, but I knew it would trace back. I knew I was already compromised." Ibrahim staggered back a step. "You expect me to believe you betrayed me to protect me? I never stopped loving you," she whispered. The door opened behind him. Kabor and the others entered, flanked by soldiers. "Time's up," Kabor said. Ibrahim turned slowly. "She stays under my custody for now. You don't have that power anymore," Kabor replied. "The council just voted to suspend your executive privileges until an inquiry is complete." "What?" Ibrahim's voice cracked. Hadiza stepped forward. "We're not removing you yet, but your authority is frozen, effective immediately." The room spun again. Aminata reached for him, but he stepped back, and then Sidi's phone rang. He answered, his face turned pale. "What is it?" Ibrahim asked. Sidi looked up, eyes wide. "Sir, Daira just landed in Ouagadougou. He's calling an emergency address in 1 hour. To the nation." Nana gasped. "Yes, and he's calling it the second liberation." Ibrahim's breath caught in his throat. He turned to Aminata. "Did you tell him I knew?" Her face was blank. The final betrayal hung in the air like a noose. The presidential convoy sliced through the city like a silver spear, its sirens silent but its speed urgent. Inside the lead vehicle, Ibrahim Traoré sat slumped in his seat, his fingers tapping against his thigh in a relentless rhythm of suppressed fury. Beside him, Captain Sidi stared ahead grimly, speaking only when necessary, the air between them thick with unspoken doubts. Ibrahim's mind played the same question again and again. Was Aminata telling the truth, or playing her final card? Downtown Ouagadougou was already boiling. Crowds had gathered in front of TV screens in markets, cafes, and even mosques. All were waiting for Daira's broadcast. Social media crackled with speculations. Some said Daira had evidence against Ibrahim. Others believed Aminata's betrayal had triggered the West's final move to replace the revolutionary president. Even the most loyal supporters of the revolution were hesitating. One betrayal in the household could be forgiven. Two, that was a cancer. Inside the palace, chaos reigned. Ministers shouted at one another across the war room table. Phones buzzed incessantly. Aides ran with papers, and the military commanders argued over whether to seize the national broadcast towers. But Ibrahim, now stripped of executive authority by the hastily assembled National Security Council, had no power to command. He sat at the head of the table anyway, as if daring them to say it out loud that the revolution was no longer his. Daira's address will air in 20 minutes, announced Communications Minister Ousmane. He's using the Ork main station. We can't block it without causing a full-scale riot. Why haven't we arrested him? Ibrahim asked, his voice low, dangerous. Because half the generals don't see him as a threat, said Hadiza, seated on his right. And the other half see him as the only way to stabilize things without foreign invasion. He's talking to the IMF, the EU, they want him in charge. Ibrahim laughed bitterly. So it was always about this. The moment I pushed the French out, they started grooming their own shadow president. Don't be naive, Inanna, the legal counsel, said sharply. This isn't just about France. You've alienated everyone, the UN, ECOWAS, the World Bank. No one wants another Sankara. I'm not Sankara, Ibrahim snapped. No, but you dream like he did, she replied, quieter, and dreamers make enemies faster than soldiers. A silence followed. It was broken only when General Kabor entered holding a tablet. He started. Kabor said simply. The room turned toward the screen. On it, Ibrahim's vice president, Colonel Issoufou Daira, stood at a podium flanked by national flags and army officers. He wore a simple green military tunic, no medals, no theatrics, just the calculated simplicity of a man about to rewrite history. My brothers and sisters, Daira began, tonight, I come not as a politician, but as a patriot. In recent days, shocking revelations have come to light that the wife of our current president has been leaking state secrets to foreign powers. This has shaken the nation to its core. And while President Traoré has served this republic with courage, love of country is not enough when security is compromised. Ibrahim stood slowly, his fists clenched. He's doing it. Daira continued, the Security Council has acted swiftly, but the people deserve more. They deserve a government they can trust, one that will restore order, re-establish international trust, and protect our sovereignty from all threats, foreign and domestic. Therefore, effective immediately, I assume transitional executive authority as per Article 14 of the National Emergency Statute. A tribunal will be established to investigate all breaches of national security. The screen cut to black. Article 14. Ibrahim exploded. That's for natural disasters. He's invoking it under intelligence collapse. Inanna muttered, it's a legal stretch, but he has the backing. I'll speak to the people. Ibrahim said suddenly, now, national broadcast, we'll go live from the palace. No, Kabor said, stepping forward. You won't. A tense silence. You're staging a coup. Ibrahim said coldly, no. The general replied, we're trying to prevent one, by silencing the president. By preventing bloodshed. Look outside, Ibrahim. The people are confused. If you speak now, they'll divide. Civil war isn't a metaphor anymore, it's an hour away. Ibrahim looked at Sidi. Do you support this? Sidi didn't answer. That silence hurt more than any words. Ibrahim turned and walked out. His guards followed. He didn't stop until he was back in his personal quarters, where Aminata was now being held under military surveillance. When he entered, she stood up, visibly shaken. You saw the address, she asked. I did. I warned you about him. After you helped him rise, she sighed. I told them things, yes, but not everything. I never mentioned your plans to nationalize the gold reserves, or your purge list, or the intelligence from Mali. I could have. I didn't. He looked at her for a long time. I need to ask you something. One last thing. Did you love me? She stepped forward. I still do. He turned away. At that moment, the door burst open. It was Sidi. Sir, we need to leave now. Why? They've voted full removal. Kabor just declared you unfit to serve. Daira's troops are en route. They'll take the palace within the hour. Ibrahim didn't flinch. And what happens to my children? They'll be safe. Daira's promised it, but we have to go. There's a safe house. He looked back at Aminata. She nodded faintly. Go, please, live. I should have seen this coming. He whispered. You did. She said. You just didn't want to believe I was part of it. Minutes later, the secret tunnel beneath the palace opened a route known only to the president, the head of security, and a few trusted aides. As Ibrahim descended into the dark corridor, guided by Sidi and flanked by loyalists, the muffled sound of gunfire echoed from far above. Daira wasn't waiting anymore. They emerged hours later in a deserted part of the countryside, where an old rebel compound had been converted into a hideout. Ibrahim sat by a fire, flanked by men who had once believed in something more than politics, the old guard, the revolutionaries, the ones who bled for the dream. "We're not done," he said quietly. One of the men handed him a burner phone. "You'll want to see this." It was a new video filmed in secret, obviously. Aminata, alone in a dimly lit room. "If this message reaches Ibrahim," she said, her voice breaking, "I want him to know. Daira doesn't plan to hold a tribunal. He's striking a deal. The French military is landing within 48 hours. He's giving them access to uranium fields in exchange for recognition. He promised to jail Ibrahim publicly to satisfy international outcry, then let him die quietly. This isn't a transition, it's a betrayal worse than mine." She looked directly into the lens. "You must fight." The screen cut to static. For the first time in 2 days, Ibrahim Traoré smiled. It was not the smile of a man who had won. It was the smile of a man who knew what he had to do next. Rain lashed against the windows of the safe house like bullets, the wind howling as if mourning the fall of a king. Inside, Ibrahim Traoré stood before a dusty map pinned to a wooden wall, red strings and faded tags webbing the paper like scars of old wars. His commanders, the ones who hadn't defected or been imprisoned, were gathered in silence. The fire crackled nearby, casting long shadows across their faces. Ibrahim spoke without turning. 3 airstrips, one in Giyawa, one near Kaya, one on the outskirts of Ouagadougou. They're planning simultaneous landings. Captain Mori stepped forward, his face sunken but eyes sharp. French logistics confirmed. "We intercepted low frequency signals matching their landing patterns. They'll hit the ground in 42 hours. Strike teams first, then private contractors." Classic neocolonial muscle. "And Daira?" Ibrahim asked. Consolidating power, he's declared a 3-month emergency government, dissolved the assembly, claimed you fled to Nigeria. Ibrahim turned. "I haven't fled, I've retreated." There was a flicker of recognition in the eyes of the room. The man they once followed into the bush, who trained barefoot with them and fed orphans from his own hands, he was still here. But this time, the fight was against betrayal, not only from across borders, but from within their own soil. "What's the plan?" Mori asked. Ibrahim crossed the room and picked up a small black case. He opened it to reveal a hard drive. On this is a copy of Daira's offshore accounts, arms deals, and direct communications with foreign intelligence services. Aminata helped me decrypt it. She was trying to make amends. Kader, a young former journalist turned propaganda strategist, leaned in. "We drop this, it won't matter. Daira controls the media now, or all telecom hubs, even the private satellite networks. He'll spin it." Ibrahim smiled coldly. "Then we don't drop it, we leak it." Silence. He looked around the room. "We feed it to 20 whistleblowers, 5 foreign news outlets, 2 African investigative groups. And this is critical, we send an edited version to Daira's own people. Let his officers know he's selling uranium to the very people he once called colonizers. Turn his house against him, then we light the match." Mori nodded slowly, "And the fire begins in Ouagadougou." That night, Ibrahim disappeared again, not into exile, but into the heart of the capital. In disguise with a small team, he slipped through the slums of Tanghin and into the safe zone near the university, where protests were beginning to bubble. The students hadn't forgotten the revolution. They had posters of him still plastered on dorm walls. In a candle-lit room, he addressed 30 young leaders. "We're not fighting for me," he told them. "We're fighting for Burkina Faso. Daira isn't building a nation, he's building a colony with better lighting. He's selling your minerals, your forests, your future, but you can take the streets again. If you rise, the world must watch, and I'll be with you." The plan began rolling at dawn. The whistleblowers were activated. French language exposes began appearing on encrypted blogs. The leaked videos, Daira in a hidden camera meeting with a French ambassador, promising unrestricted exploration access to mines in the Sahel, exploded across Twitter, then Reddit, then Pan-African networks. Hashtags bloomed like wildfire. #Daira Trader, #Our Gold Our Land, #Return of the Revolution. Inside the palace, Daira's team scrambled. "Where is it coming from?" he shouted. "Everywhere." His tech advisor gasped. VPNs, onion routers, South African servers, some rerouted through Iceland. We can't plug them all. Traoré turned to General Kabor. Start arresting student leaders. Shut down the network. Kabor hesitated. You do that and the streets will explode. They're exploding already. Traoré snapped, do it. But it was too late. By mid-afternoon, the capital was choked in protest. Flags of Burkina Faso waved alongside banners of Traoré's face. In Bobo Dioulasso, miners laid down their tools. In Kaya, veterans of the revolution refused orders. In Guyayua, airport workers began a maintenance strike, grounding incoming jets, including a scheduled French surveillance plane. Meanwhile, Ibrahim and his team launched Phase 2. With help from loyal elements inside the Communications Directorate, they hijacked an unused satellite feed. For 15 minutes, across all major channels, even Traoré's tightly controlled ORT, a broadcast aired. Ibrahim stood on screen live, not as a fugitive, not as a traitor, but as a man of the soil. I am Ibrahim Traoré, he began, voice calm but fiery. I have not abandoned you, I have not fled, I am here on our land in our capital. The lies you've been told were born of fear, the fear of truth. I was betrayed not only by foreign powers, but by a man I once called brother. He paused. But this is not about vengeance. This is about reclaiming our destiny. Traoré is not a leader. He is a broker, and what he's selling is your future. The feed cut just before the military could locate the source. That night, thousands surged toward the palace. Traoré ordered live fire. Kabor refused. So did 4 other generals. They barricaded themselves in a wing of the military compound and released a statement. We no longer recognize Colonel Traoré's authority. We call for a transitional restoration under President Traoré. Traoré, red-eyed and desperate, called France. You promised me protection. The voice on the other end was cold. We promised you opportunity. You failed to manage it. Click. Cornered, Traoré tried one last gamble. He summoned Aminata. She arrived under heavy guard, escorted into the grand chamber. He stared at her. You owe me. She raised an eyebrow. Do I? You were my eyes, my ears, my shield. You said you believed in the mission. I believed in a sovereign Burkina. You turned it into a bargaining chip. He slapped the table. You helped betray him. Now he's turning the people against me. I betrayed him to protect you, she hissed. But I see now that was the greater betrayal. Traoré narrowed his eyes. Then I should have had you executed. Aminata leaned in, smiling like a woman with nothing left to lose. You should have, because now I've recorded everything. She tapped her earring. Outside, the palace gates exploded in sound. Drums, chants, footsteps, a surge. The revolution was back. From a hidden passage, Ibrahim entered the compound with loyalists. Room by room, hall by hall, they reclaimed the space. Officers laid down arms. Secretaries wept. Guards crossed sides. Ibrahim reached the grand chamber just as Traoré pulled a pistol. Don't, Ibrahim said. Traoré's hand trembled. You're no hero. No, Ibrahim said. I'm a man who refused to die for your lie. A shot rang out, but it wasn't Ibrahim who pulled the trigger. It was Aminata. Traoré collapsed, not dead, but bleeding, broken. Ibrahim turned to her, eyes wide. I told you, she said softly, I still love you. As the sounds of the people surged louder outside as loyal commanders entered and the flag was raised again on the palace pole, Ibrahim stepped forward to the balcony. He looked over the sea of body students, soldiers, mothers, children. I have returned, he said. The crowd roared. Then without warning a shot cracked through the sky. A sniper, a scream. Ibrahim stumbled. Chaos? Aminata screamed his name. As he collapsed into the arms of Mori, the last thing Ibrahim saw was the flag, red, green, gold still waving. The revolution had returned, but would its leader live to see its victory? The room pulsed with panic. Screams erupted outside the palace, where moments before thousands had celebrated under the starlit sky. Now, that same crowd surged in confused terror. Inside the grand chamber, Ibrahim Traoré lay still, blood soaking through his tunic, his face pale, eyes fluttering between life and oblivion. Aminata knelt beside him, pressing her hands to the wound, her fingers slick with crimson. Medic, she screamed, voice ragged, desperate. Captain Mori was already shouting into his radio. We need the trauma team now. Sniper shot from rooftop quadrant, northwest watchtower. secure the perimeter. 2 medics crashed through the door seconds later. As they began emergency triage, Aminata held Ibrahim's head in her lap, rocking slightly. "Stay with me," she whispered, tears streaming. "You don't get to leave me, not after everything." Ibrahim's lips barely moved. "You still love me, always," she choked. Then, with what seemed like his last ounce of strength, Ibrahim gave a weak smile. "Then, we win." The medics rushed him out. Outside, the streets boiled with fury. The people, electrified by the sight of their fallen hero, erupted, not in fear but rage. Word spread like lightning. They shot him. The traitors tried again. Torches were raised, barricades erected. Within hours, neighborhoods became cells of resistance, a coordinated tidal wave of defiance. Government loyalists fled, the foreign embassy closed its gates, but something darker brewed in the shadows. Back in the palace, Aminata, her dress soaked in blood, marched toward the war room. Behind her, Mori and Kader trailed, silent. The silence was shattered only when she slammed her palm down on the security console, unlocking the classified day. The vault Ibrahim had hidden for months, codenamed Torchlight. "What's this?" Kader asked. "Insurance," Aminata replied. He created a failsafe, a list of every official who took bribes to betray the Republic. Bank accounts, wire transfers, even voice recordings. Mori whistled low. This could set the whole elite class on fire." "Exactly," she said. "We burn it down." But Kader hesitated. "Wait, there are generals on here, judges, journalists, even some resistance leaders. They all sold pieces of this country." Aminata snapped. "No more compromises. Ibrahim gave us the chance to rebuild from ash. We take it." For the next 48 hours, as Ibrahim hovered between life and death in a secured hospital bunker, Burkina Faso convulsed. Torchlight was leaked globally. CNN, Al Jazeera, BBC, and African independent outlets from Ghana to South Africa. The people saw the truth. Diarra hadn't been alone. His coup had been orchestrated with the silent approval of international mining syndicates and regional power brokers. The offshore accounts of more than 30 government figures were traced to Swiss banks and French real estate holdings. In one of the most explosive political leaks in the continent's modern history, entire sectors of Burkina Faso's elite were implicated in what was soon called the Quiet Auction, a silent, systematic sale of the nation's resources. And then came the riots. In Bobo Dioulasso, citizens torched the offices of a gold mining conglomerate. In Ouagadougou, crowds stormed the homes of indicted ministers. The military, leaderless after Diarra's downfall and scattered loyalties, fractured completely. Some units joined the protesters, others vanished into the hills. Aminata, though unelected, became the de facto leader. She stood on national television, dressed not in power suits or military garb, but a simple woven Fosso Dan Fanny robe. "I do not claim power," she began, "but I claim truth, and that truth must now guide us." She announced a special tribunal, one not run by courts or politicians, but by the people. Each name from the Torchlight files would be presented to the public, along with evidence, and reviewed in town hall-style hearings. No executions, no secret detentions, just truth, exposure, and exile or imprisonment depending on the people's verdict. It was radical, and it worked. Within a week, 22 officials had fled, 15 surrendered, 5 were placed under protective custody by loyalist units fearing lynch mobs. Burkina Faso, for the first time in decades, began to breathe. Then on the 7th day, Ibrahim awoke. His first word, Aminata. She was at his bedside instantly. "I'm here. You held the line." She smiled. "We did more than that. We took the palace. We took the streets. We took the truth and made it national currency." His hand brushed hers weakly. "You were always stronger. I was always yours," she said softly. He closed his eyes, a tear slipping down his cheek, but peace was short-lived. A week later, France announced it would suspend all aid to Burkina Faso. The World Bank followed suit. Sanctions loomed. Media coverage shifted tone from revolutionary resurgence to military populism. Foreign investors pulled out. Currency inflation began. Protests outside the country's consulates in Europe intensified. Aminata and Ibrahim sat together in the now symbolic balcony where he'd once stood before the sniper's bullet. "They'll try to starve us now," he said. She nodded. "They're already framing you again as a dictator reborn, but I'm not ruling," he said. "No," she said, "but you're alive, and for them, that's enough." He looked out across the city. "We need allies," he said. "On the continent, beyond it, somewhere, someone must be tired of this same old colonial game." She handed him a file. "Kenya, Tanzania, Cuba, Iran, some small nations are offering technical aid. Nothing massive, but they believe in the message." He smiled. "Sometimes belief is enough." Then, a soft knock on the door. Maury entered, face grim. "There's been an incident." Ibrahim stood. "What now?" Maury handed him a tablet. A video played. It showed a masked man, heavily armed, speaking into a camera. "We are the sons of the soil," the voice said. "Traoré may have dethroned the traitor, but he has not dethroned the system. No tribunal will fix what blood must cleanse. From this day, we act independently. We will target all implicated, ministers, judges, foreign contractors. No more mercy, no more trials, only retribution." Boom. The video cut to footage of a luxury SUV in flames, a prominent banker's convoy, ambushed and executed. Ibrahim stared at the screen. Aminata whispered, "This isn't the revolution." "No," he said, "it's the backlash." The room was silent. Finally, Maury said, "How do we fight this?" And Ibrahim, once a silent shadow, now fully in the light, answered, "We don't fight them with guns. We fight them with honor, with visibility. We make every trial public, every process transparent. We invite the world to watch. And if they still attack," he paused, "then we die with the truth, but we never become them." Later that night, alone in the empty hall where it had all begun, Ibrahim stood before a cracked mirror. He saw not a soldier, not a martyr, not even a president, but a man trying to turn blood into soil and grow something living. Then, from the shadows, a familiar voice. "You always said power changes people." He turned. It was Aminata. He smiled. "So far, it's only tried to break me." She stepped close, holding his hand. "Let's see what it builds." Together, they stepped outside onto the balcony, and standing before them, stretching all the way to the horizon, were millions, silent, determined, unarmed. Waiting, watching, ready. For once, the revolution didn't begin with a shot, it ended with a choice. And for the first time in modern memory, that choice belonged to the people.